Chen Wei had been practicing martial arts for over 25 years. His small dojo in the heart of Bangkok attracted students from across Southeast Asia. People came to learn from him because of his reputation as one of the most skilled fighters in the region. He had won countless tournaments and had even appeared in several action movies as a stunt coordinator. His kicks were legendary, precise, powerful, and lightning fast. Chen Wei specialized in Taekwondo and Muay Thai, but he had also studied various other fighting styles during his travels. He could break wooden boards with his bare hands and could kick higher than most people could reach with their arms. His students often said watching him fight was like watching poetry in motion. Every movement was calculated, every strike had purpose. The master was a man of average height but extraordinary build. His muscles were lean and defined from decades of training. His eyes held the calm confidence of someone who had never truly been defeated. He moved with the grace of a dancer and the power of a warrior. People respected him not just for his fighting skills, but also for his discipline and dedication to the martial arts. Chen Wei had grown up poor in rural China. His family could barely afford food, let alone martial arts lessons. But young Chen was determined. He would watch kung fu movies and practice the moves he saw, often injuring himself in the process. When he was 12, an old martial arts master took pity on him and agreed to teach him in exchange for helping with household chores. The old master was strict and demanding. Training began before sunrise and continued until well after sunset. Chen learned not just fighting techniques, but also philosophy, meditation, and the importance of respect and humility. The master taught him that true martial arts were not about showing off or hurting others, but about self-discipline and protecting those who could not protect themselves. By the time Chen was 18, he had mastered several fighting styles. He left his small village to seek his fortune in the wider world. He traveled through China, learning from different masters and participating in underground fighting tournaments. He won most of his fights and earned enough money to support himself while continuing his training. Eventually, Chen made his way to Thailand, where he fell in love with Muay Thai. The brutal art of 8 limbs challenged him in ways he had never experienced. The Thai fighters were incredibly tough and skilled. Chen spent 3 years training in authentic Muay Thai camps, learning from some of the greatest fighters in the sport's history. When Chen finally opened his own dojo in Bangkok, he was no longer the poor farm boy from rural China. He had become a respected martial artist with an impressive reputation. Students paid high fees to train under him, and he lived comfortably from his teaching and occasional movie work. But success had changed Chen in subtle ways. The humility his first master had tried to instill in him had been gradually replaced by pride. He began to believe his own reputation. He started to think that very few people in the world could match his skills. This confidence, which had once been quiet and respectful, slowly transformed into arrogance. Chen would often demonstrate his abilities in public places, breaking boards or performing impressive kicks to attract new students. He enjoyed the gasps of amazement from onlookers and the way people would whisper about his abilities. His social media accounts were filled with videos of his most spectacular techniques, and he had thousands of followers who admired his skills. One particular video had gone viral across Southeast Asia. In it, Chen performed a series of kicks that seemed to defy gravity. He jumped into the air and delivered 5 separate kicks before landing, each one powerful enough to break thick wooden planks. The video had been viewed millions of times, and Chen had become something of a celebrity in martial arts circles. The fame went to his head. Chen started believing that he was invincible, that no ordinary person could stand against him. He began to look down on people who did not practice martial arts, seeing them as weak and unprepared for the realities of physical conflict. He would often make comments about how modern society had made people soft and how they needed to learn to defend themselves. This attitude began to affect his relationships. Old friends started avoiding him because every conversation seemed to turn into a lecture about the importance of martial arts or a demonstration of his latest technique. Even his students began to notice the change, though most were too respectful or intimidated to say anything directly. Chen's girlfriend, Mei, had tried to talk to him about his changing personality. She told him that he was becoming too focused on proving his superiority and was losing sight of the deeper values of martial arts. But Chen dismissed her concerns, telling her that she simply did not understand the responsibilities that came with being a master of his caliber. The martial arts community in Bangkok was small, and word of Chen's growing arrogance had spread. Other instructors and fighters had begun to distance themselves from him. Some of the older, more traditional masters had even made subtle comments about the importance of humility and respect, though Chen was too proud to recognize that these comments were directed at him. Despite these warning signs, Chen continued down his path of increasing pride and confidence. He started looking for bigger and better ways to demonstrate his abilities. He talked about challenging famous fighters or performing even more spectacular public demonstrations. He wanted the whole world to know about his skills. It was during this period of peak arrogance that Chen learned about the upcoming state visit. A foreign dignitary was coming to Thailand, and there would be a large public ceremony at the Grand Palace in Bangkok. Chen saw this as the perfect opportunity to showcase his abilities to an international audience. He began planning what he thought would be the ultimate demonstration of his martial arts mastery. He imagined performing his techniques in front of the gathered crowd, maybe even getting invited to meet the visiting dignitary personally. In his mind, this would be the moment that would elevate him from a local celebrity to international recognition. Chen spent weeks preparing for the event. He practiced his most impressive techniques until they were perfect. He planned exactly how he would approach the demonstration and what he would say to any reporters who might be present. He even prepared special clothing that would photograph well and show off his physique. As the day of the ceremony approached, Chen's excitement grew. He told everyone who would listen about his plans. He posted on social media about the upcoming special demonstration he had planned. He was convinced that this would be the day that changed his life forever. But Chen had made a fundamental error in his planning. In his arrogance and self-absorption, he had not bothered to learn about the security arrangements for the event. He had not considered that a state ceremony would have very different rules and protections than a normal public gathering. He was so focused on his own glory that he had overlooked crucial details about the situation he was walking into. The night before the ceremony, Chen lay in bed visualizing his moment of triumph. He imagined the crowd cheering as he demonstrated his incredible kicks. He pictured newspaper headlines describing his amazing abilities. He dreamed of offers from Hollywood producers and international martial arts organizations. What Chen did not know was that the security for the event would be unlike anything he had ever encountered. The royal guards assigned to protect the ceremony were not ordinary security personnel. They were elite soldiers, highly trained and completely dedicated to their duty. They had prepared for months for this event, studying every possible threat and planning responses to any disruption. The stage was set for a collision between Chen's overwhelming pride and the immovable force of royal security. The martial arts master who believed himself invincible was about to learn a lesson in humility that would change his life forever. Captain Somchai Ratanakorn stood at attention in the early morning light, his crisp uniform spotless and his bearing perfect. At 32 years old, he was one of the youngest officers ever to be appointed to the Royal Guard, but his promotion had been earned through exceptional skill, unwavering loyalty, and years of dedicated service to the Thai monarchy. Somchai came from a military family. His father had served in the regular army for 20 years, and his grandfather had been a palace guard during the reign of the previous king. From childhood, Somchai had been taught that protecting the royal family was the highest honor a Thai citizen could achieve. He had grown up hearing stories of brave guards who had given their lives in service to the crown. The path to becoming a royal guard was extremely difficult. Only the very best soldiers from the Thai military were even considered for the position. The selection process involved months of physical testing, psychological evaluation, background checks, and intensive training. Out of thousands of applicants each year, only a handful were chosen. Somchai had excelled in every aspect of the selection process. His physical fitness was outstanding, he could run long distances without tiring, perform hundreds of push-ups, and had lightning-quick reflexes. His marksmanship scores were among the highest ever recorded. But what really set him apart was his mental discipline and his absolute dedication to duty. The training program for Royal Guards was legendary for its intensity. New recruits underwent 6 months of grueling preparation that pushed them to their physical and mental limits. They learned advanced combat techniques, security procedures, emergency protocols, and the intricate ceremonial duties required for royal events. During his training, Samchai had studied various martial arts as part of the combat curriculum. The guards learned techniques from multiple fighting styles, including traditional Thai martial arts, modern military combat systems, and specialized close protection methods. But their training went far beyond simple fighting skills. Royal guards were taught to think strategically, to anticipate threats, and to respond to dangerous situations with split-second timing. They practiced scenarios involving everything from individual attackers to coordinated terrorist assaults. They learned to protect their charges while maintaining the dignity and grace required for royal ceremonies. Samchai had graduated at the top of his class and had quickly distinguished himself during his first assignments. He was known for his calm demeanor under pressure and his ability to spot potential problems before they developed into actual threats. His fellow guards respected him for his professionalism and his complete reliability. Over the years, Samchai had been present at hundreds of royal events. He had stood guard during state dinners with world leaders, protected the royal family during public appearances, and maintained security at ceremonies attended by thousands of people. He had never once failed in his duty or allowed any threat to reach those under his protection. The captain took his responsibilities very seriously. He understood that the safety of the royal family was not just his job, but his sacred duty. He had sworn an oath to protect them with his life if necessary, and he meant every word of that pledge. The idea of failing in his duty was simply unthinkable to him. Samchai's personal life was simple and disciplined. He lived in modest quarters near the palace, woke early every morning for physical training, and spent his free time studying security procedures or practicing combat techniques. He had few hobbies outside his work, but he was content with his life. Serving the crown gave his existence meaning and purpose. The upcoming ceremony presented particular challenges. The visiting foreign dignitary was an important ally of Thailand, and the event would be attended by government officials, diplomats, and members of the international press. Security had to be perfect, but it also had to be invisible enough not to detract from the ceremonial aspects of the occasion. Samchai had spent weeks planning for the event. He had studied the venue in detail, identified all possible security vulnerabilities, and developed contingency plans for various threat scenarios. He had coordinated with local police, intelligence services, and diplomatic security teams to ensure comprehensive protection. The Grand Palace where the ceremony would take place was a complex of buildings and courtyards that presented unique security challenges. There were multiple entrances, numerous hiding spots, and hundreds of tourists and staff who had legitimate reasons to be in the area. Controlling access while maintaining the open atmosphere required for a public ceremony required careful planning and flawless execution. Samchai had positioned his guards at strategic points throughout the venue. Some were visible, standing at attention in their ceremonial uniforms, while others were plainclothes officers mixed among the crowd. Communication systems had been tested multiple times, and every guard knew exactly what to do in case of emergency. The captain himself would be positioned near the main ceremonial area, close enough to respond instantly to any threat but positioned so as not to distract from the proceedings. He had studied the guest list, identified potential troublemakers, and briefed his team on what to watch for during the event. One thing that concerned Samchai was the growing trend of people trying to gain attention at public events by performing unauthorized demonstrations or stunts. Social media had created a culture where people were willing to take extreme risks for a few moments of fame. He had seen incidents where individuals had tried to rush stages, interrupt speeches, or perform dangerous acts to get attention. Security briefings had mentioned several individuals who might try to disrupt the ceremony. There were political protesters who opposed the visiting dignitaries' policies, attention seekers who might try to perform publicity stunts, and various other potential troublemakers. Each had been investigated and assessed for the level of threat they might pose. The morning of the ceremony arrived crisp and clear. Samchai had been awake since 4 o'clock, reviewing final security arrangements and conducting last-minute briefings with his team. Every detail had been checked and double-checked. The venue was secure, the guards were in position, and all communication systems were functioning perfectly. As the crowds began to gather, Samchai took his position near the ceremonial platform. He stood perfectly still, his eyes constantly scanning the crowd for any sign of trouble. His earpiece crackled occasionally with status reports from other security personnel, all indicating that everything was proceeding normally. The captain had trained himself to notice things that others might miss. He could spot suspicious behavior, identify individuals who did not belong, and detect potential weapons or dangerous items. His awareness of his surroundings was complete and constant. Nothing escaped his attention. Samkai's uniform was immaculate, his posture perfect, and his expression professionally neutral. To observers, he appeared calm and relaxed, but internally he was completely alert and ready to respond to any threat. Years of training had taught him to maintain this state of controlled readiness for hours without fatigue. The ceremony began with traditional Thai music and the arrival of various dignitaries. Samchai watched as government officials, foreign diplomats, and other VIPs took their seats in the designated areas. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan. The crowd was well behaved, the weather was perfect, and there had been no security incidents. As the main ceremony commenced, Samchai allowed himself a moment of professional satisfaction. Months of planning and preparation had resulted in a flawless security operation. The visiting dignitary was safe, the royal protocol was being observed perfectly, and the international press was getting excellent footage of the proceedings. But the captain knew better than to become complacent. Experience had taught him that threats could emerge without warning, even during events that seemed completely peaceful. He maintained his vigilance, continuing to scan the crowd and monitor his communication channels for any signs of trouble. What Samchai could not have anticipated was that someone in the crowd was watching him with particular interest. Chen Wei had arrived early and had positioned himself where he could observe the security arrangements. The martial arts master was studying the guards, looking for the perfect moment to make his spectacular demonstration. Chen had identified Samchai as the obvious target for his stunt. The captain's prominent position and professional bearing made him the perfect foil for what Chen imagined would be an impressive display of martial arts superiority. In his arrogant mindset, Chen saw the guard as nothing more than a prop in his performance. The martial arts master had no understanding of what he was really looking at. He saw a man in uniform standing still and assumed this meant the guard was unprepared for real action. Chen's experience was limited to tournament fighting and choreographed movie scenes. He had never encountered a truly elite professional warrior. Samchai represented something Chen had never experienced: genuine military discipline combined with world-class training and absolute dedication to duty. The captain was not a performer or a competitor seeking glory. He was a protector whose entire existence was focused on a single mission: ensuring that no harm came to those under his protection. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reveal the vast difference between martial arts showmanship and real combat readiness. Chen's pride and ignorance were about to collide with Samkai's professional competence and unwavering commitment to his duty. Chen Wei moved through the crowd with the confidence of a predator stalking prey. He had spent the first hour of the ceremony observing the security arrangements and had convinced himself that the guards were nothing more than ceremonial decoration. In his mind, they were soldiers playing dress-up, more concerned with looking impressive than being prepared for real action. The martial arts master had identified his target. Captain Samchai stood near the main platform, his attention apparently focused on the ceremonial proceedings. Chen saw this as proof that the guard was unprepared and unaware. What Chen did not realize was that Samkai's seeming inattention was actually the mark of a professional who was simultaneously monitoring dozens of different potential threat sources. Chen began moving closer to his target, weaving through the crowd with practiced ease. He had changed into his demonstration outfit, loose-fitting pants that would allow for maximum kicking range and a fitted shirt that would show off his muscular build. He had even brought a small camera crew, friends who would document what he believed would be his moment of international fame. As Chen approached, he began stretching and loosening his muscles. Other people in the crowd noticed his preparations and some began to move away, sensing that something unusual was about to happen. A few pulled out their phones, expecting to witness some kind of performance or demonstration. The martial arts master was running through his plan sequence in his mind. He would approach the guard from a slight angle, call out a challenge to get his attention, and, then, demonstrate his superior kicking ability with a spectacular technique that would stop just short of actual contact. He imagined the guard stumbling backward in shock while the crowd gasped in amazement. Chen had performed similar demonstrations dozens of times in controlled environments. In his dojo or at martial arts exhibitions, these displays were perfectly safe and very impressive. But he had never attempted anything like this in a real security situation, with professional guards who were trained to respond to unexpected threats with immediate and overwhelming force. Captain Samchai had already noticed Chen's approach. Years of security training had taught him to identify unusual behavior patterns, and the martial arts master's movements and preparations had triggered every alarm in the guard's professional consciousness. Samchai began tracking Chen's position while appearing to maintain his focus on the ceremony. The captain's earpiece crackled with a quiet update from another security officer who had also spotted the potential troublemaker. "Eyes on suspicious individual, quadrant 3, approaching your position," came the calm professional voice. Samchai acknowledged with a barely perceptible nod, his body language showing no change that ordinary observers could detect. But, beneath his calm exterior, Samchai was shifting into a heightened state of readiness. His weight distribution changed slightly to optimize his balance for quick movement. His hands, which had been clasped behind his back, moved to a more neutral position. His breathing deepened and slowed, preparing his body for potential action. Chen was now within striking distance. He paused for a moment, ensuring that his camera crew was in position and that he had the attention of nearby spectators. He could see news cameras in the distance and imagined his demonstration being broadcast around the world. In his mind, this was already his greatest triumph. The martial arts master called out loudly, "Hey, guard! You think you can protect anyone standing there like a statue?" His voice carried clearly across the ceremonial area, causing heads to turn and drawing unwanted attention to the security situation. Captain Samchai turned to face Chen, his movement smooth and controlled. His expression remained professionally neutral, but his eyes were now focused entirely on the potential threat. "Sir, please remain calm and return to the designated spectator areas," he said in clear, authoritative Thai, followed by English. Chen laughed dismissively. "You don't even know what real fighting looks like," he taunted, beginning to shift into a fighting stance. "Let me show you what a real martial artist can do." He raised his leg, preparing for what he intended to be a spectacular demonstration kick that would pass within inches of the guard's head. What happened next occurred so quickly that most spectators were unable to follow the sequence of events. Chen launched into his planned technique, a jumping roundhouse kick that was designed to showcase his flexibility and power. It was indeed an impressive technique, the kind that would have earned applause in a martial arts demonstration. But Captain Samchai was not a martial arts student or a movie audience. He was an elite soldier trained to neutralize threats with maximum efficiency and minimum risk. The moment Chen's foot left the ground, Samchai moved. The captain's response was not the flashy, elaborate technique that Chen might have expected from another martial artist. Instead, it was the direct, brutal efficiency of military close combat training. As Chen's kick reached its highest point, Samchai stepped forward and, slightly to the side, moving inside the arc of the attack. Chen suddenly found himself completely off balance, with one leg extended high in the air and no way to defend himself. Before he could even begin to understand what was happening, Samchai had grabbed his extended leg and swept his supporting foot, sending the martial arts master crashing to the ground. The impact knocked the wind out of Chen's lungs and sent a shock of pain through his back and shoulders. He lay on the ceremonial pavement, gasping for breath and trying to understand how his perfect technique had resulted in such complete failure. The confident martial arts master had been reduced to a winded, confused man lying helpless on the ground. But Samchai was not finished. His training dictated that any threat to the security of the ceremony had to be completely neutralized. Before Chen could begin to recover, the captain had flipped him onto his stomach and applied a professional restraint technique that left the martial arts master completely immobilized. Chen tried to struggle, but found that his years of tournament training had not prepared him for this situation. Every movement he made only resulted in increased pain and tighter restraint.
The techniques he had spent decades perfecting seemed useless against Samkai's methodical, professional approach. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 10 seconds from start to finish. Most of the crowd had barely registered that something was happening before it was completely over. The news cameras that Chen had hoped would broadcast his moment of glory instead captured his humiliating defeat and subsequent restraint. Other security personnel quickly moved in to assist Captain Samchai. Within moments, Chen was surrounded by uniformed guards and plainclothes officers. His camera crew was also detained and their equipment confiscated. What Chen had intended as a publicity stunt had turned into a serious security incident with potential criminal charges. As Chen lay on the ground with his face pressed against the ceremonial stones, he began to understand the magnitude of his mistake. This was not a martial arts tournament or a movie set where mistakes could be laughed off and scenes could be res-hot. This was a real security situation with real consequences. The pain in his back and shoulders was nothing compared to the crushing realization of his failure. Chen had built his entire identity around his martial arts superiority, and, in less than 10 seconds, that identity had been completely destroyed. The man who had never truly been defeated had just been utterly dominated by someone he had dismissed as ceremonial decoration. Captain Samchai, meanwhile, had already returned his attention to the broader security situation. His earpiece was buzzing with status reports from other officers, and he was coordinating the response to ensure that the incident did not escalate further. For him, dealing with Chen had been just another routine security matter, no different from removing any other disruptive individual. The ceremony continued with barely a pause. The visiting dignitary, protected behind multiple layers of security, was probably unaware that anything unusual had happened. The other spectators gradually returned their attention to the proceedings, though many were now discussing the brief but spectacular confrontation they had just witnessed. Chen remained on the ground, held in place by professional restraints and watched by multiple guards. His elaborate plans for international fame had collapsed into public humiliation. The viral video he had imagined would showcase his martial arts mastery would instead document his complete defeat and arrest. The realization of what he had done began to sink in. Chen had not just failed to demonstrate his superiority, he had attacked a member of the royal guard during a state ceremony. The legal and personal consequences of his actions would extend far beyond the physical pain and embarrassment he was currently experiencing. As security personnel prepared to remove him from the venue, Chen caught a glimpse of Captain Samchai resuming his professional stance near the ceremonial platform. The guard's uniform was still perfect, his posture unchanged, his attention once again focused on protecting the ceremony. It was as if the confrontation had never happened. This final image drove home the true extent of Chen's defeat. He had thrown everything he had at this guard, his best technique, his years of training, his complete commitment to proving his superiority. And the result had been so one-sided that his opponent had barely been inconvenienced by the encounter. The detention cell was small, concrete, and completely different from any place Chen Wei had ever imagined himself. The martial arts master sat on the hard metal bench, his body aching from his encounter with Captain Samchai and his mind reeling from the complete collapse of everything he thought he knew about himself. Chen had been formally charged with disrupting a state ceremony, assault on a government official, and several other serious offenses. The Thai legal system took threats to royal events very seriously, and the prosecutor had made it clear that Chen was facing the possibility of several years in prison. His dreams of international fame had transformed into a nightmare of legal consequences and public humiliation. The first video of the incident had appeared online within hours of Chen's arrest. Shot from multiple angles by spectators with smartphones, the footage showed clearly how completely outmatched Chen had been. There was no ambiguity about what had happened. A martial arts master had attempted to demonstrate his superiority and had been effortlessly defeated by a professional soldier. The video went viral, but not in the way Chen had hoped. Instead of showcasing his martial arts skills, it became an example of arrogance meeting reality. Comments sections filled with criticism of Chen's behavior and praise for Captain Samkai's professional response. Martial arts forums discussed the incident as a cautionary tale about the difference between sport fighting and real combat situations. Chen's students began leaving his dojo almost immediately. Parents pulled their children from his classes, and adult students found other instructors. The reputation he had spent decades building was destroyed in a matter of days. The viral video that was supposed to elevate his career had instead ended it completely. His girlfriend, May, visited him in detention once before ending their relationship. She had tried for months to warn him about his increasing arrogance and pride, but he had dismissed her concerns. Now she told him that she could no longer be with someone who had so completely lost sight of the values that martial arts were supposed to teach. The martial arts community's response was particularly devastating for Chen. Masters and instructors throughout Southeast Asia issued statements distancing themselves from his actions. Several martial arts organizations expelled him from membership, and tournaments banned him from future participation. The respect he had earned through years of competition was gone forever. Chen's family in China learned about the incident through social media. His elderly parents, who had been so proud of their son's success, were now dealing with the shame of his international humiliation. His father, a simple farmer who had sacrificed to support Chen's early training, could not understand how his son had thrown away everything he had achieved. The legal proceedings moved slowly, giving Chen plenty of time to reflect on his situation. His lawyer, paid for with the last of his savings after his dojo closed, explained that the best they could hope for was a reduced sentence in exchange for a public apology and admission of guilt. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and the Thai courts would not be sympathetic to someone who had disrupted a state ceremony. During the long days in detention, Chen began to remember the lessons his first master had tried to teach him about humility and respect. The old man had warned that martial arts without proper character development would lead to disaster. Chen had dismissed those teachings as outdated philosophy, but now he understood their practical wisdom. Captain Samchai, meanwhile, had returned to his normal duties without giving the incident much thought. For him, dealing with Chen had been routine professional work, no different from handling any other security threat. He received a commendation for his quick and effective response, but the recognition was just a formal acknowledgement of doing his job properly. The captain's life continued unchanged. He still woke early for training, still performed his duties with the same dedication, and still found meaning in his service to the crown. The brief confrontation with Chen had been so minor compared to his other responsibilities that he rarely thought about it afterward. When asked about the incident by his superiors, Samchai described it in purely professional terms. He had identified a threat, assessed the situation, and neutralized the problem using appropriate force. The individual's martial arts background was irrelevant, what mattered was protecting the ceremony and the people under his care. The international news coverage of the incident focused more on the security implications than on the personal drama. Diplomatic security experts praised the Thai Royal Guard's professional response and used the incident as an example of proper threat assessment and neutralization. The fact that the threat had come from a martial arts expert was considered an interesting footnote rather than the main story. Chen's former students, watching the news coverage, began to understand how completely their instructor had misled them about the nature of real combat. Many sought out new teachers who emphasized traditional values and proper character development alongside physical techniques. The incident became a teaching tool for instructors who wanted to emphasize the importance of humility and respect. The tourism industry in Thailand barely noticed the incident. The ceremony had concluded successfully, the visiting dignitary had been protected, and normal activities had resumed within hours. The professional response of the security forces actually enhanced Thailand's reputation as a safe destination for international events. Chen's social media accounts, which had once showcased his martial arts achievements, became monuments to his failure. The comments sections filled with criticism and mockery from around the world. He eventually had all accounts deleted, but screenshots and saved videos continued circulating online, ensuring his humiliation would be preserved indefinitely. After 3 months in detention, Chen accepted a plea agreement that resulted in a 2-year prison sentence, deportation back to China upon release, and a lifetime ban from returning to Thailand. The alternative was a trial that his lawyer assured him would result in a much harsher sentence. Chen signed the agreement knowing that his life as he had known it was over. Prison was a harsh environment that completed Chen's education in humility. The other inmates had no interest in his martial arts background, and the guards treated him like any other prisoner.
The man who had once been feared and respected in fighting circles was now just another number in the system. Chen used his time in prison to reflect on the path that had led him to this point. He began to understand that his gradual transformation from humble student to arrogant master had been a betrayal of everything martial arts were supposed to represent. His first teacher's emphasis on character development was not outdated philosophy but essential wisdom. The physical skills Chen had spent decades developing seemed meaningless now. His ability to break boards or perform spectacular kicks had not helped him when faced with a truly skilled opponent. More importantly, those abilities had become sources of pride that had led him away from the deeper values of martial arts. When Chen was finally released and deported to China, he returned to his home village as a changed man. The confident master who had left years before was replaced by someone who understood the difference between true strength and mere showmanship. His parents barely recognized their son, not because of his physical appearance but because of his dramatically altered attitude. Chen spent his first weeks back home helping with farm work and reflecting on his future. The martial arts career that had defined his adult life was over, but he began to see this as an opportunity rather than just a loss. He had learned lessons about humility and respect that no amount of training could have taught him. Eventually, Chen found work as a laborer and began teaching basic self-defense to local children without charge. His approach was completely different from his previous methods. Instead of emphasizing spectacular techniques and competitive success, he focused on discipline, respect, and practical skills for personal protection. The children who learned from Chen benefited from his hard-won wisdom. He taught them that martial arts were not about proving superiority over others but about developing self-control and the ability to protect those who needed help. His lessons emphasized character development as much as physical technique. Chen never again sought fame or recognition for his martial arts abilities. The man who had once dreamed of international celebrity was content to live quietly and share his knowledge with those who could benefit from it. His encounter with Captain Samchai had taught him that true strength came from humility, discipline, and service to others. The video of Chen's defeat continued circulating online for years, serving as a reminder that martial arts without proper character development could lead to spectacular failure. Instructors around the world used the incident as a teaching tool, helping their students understand the importance of humility and respect in martial arts training. Captain Samchai continued his service to the Thai Royal Guard, eventually rising to higher positions and training new generations of security personnel. He occasionally used the incident with Chen as an example in training scenarios, though he never emphasized the martial arts aspect of the confrontation. For him, it remained simply an example of proper threat assessment and response. The lesson of Chen's story spread throughout the martial arts community, becoming a cautionary tale about the dangers of pride and arrogance. Young fighters learned that technical skill without proper character development was not only worthless but potentially destructive. The incident served as a reminder that martial arts were supposed to build better people, not just better fighters. Chen's transformation from arrogant master to humble teacher represented a complete reversal of his life's direction. The man who had once sought to prove his superiority over others now dedicated himself to helping others develop the character and wisdom that had taken him so long to learn. His greatest defeat had become the foundation for his only real victory, the conquest of his own pride and the rediscovery of martial arts' true purpose.